Go to Congressman Mark Green for some of the reasons that Christina noted and many, many others. He was a no vote on this massive spending plan. He's the Tennessee congressman. He's a physician by training. So we get sort of like a double bang for a buck here, and I'm happy to have him. Congressman, thank you for joining us. You were not keen on these combined $2.3 trillion worth of spending measures, were you?
No, not at all. And there were a lot of reasons. Of course, thanks for having me on the show, Neil. First off, just the sheer fact that it was 5,593 pages handed to us with 5 hours and 45 minutes to read it before we had to vote on it. That principle alone is enough to vote no on it. But then you look at all of the chock-a-block full of spending that, we're a nation that is deeply in debt. And to take the coronavirus and say, well, why don't we spend millions of dollars to eradicate? I mean, I get murder hornet. I mean, that's a big deal. But the eradication programs for marijuana certainly weren't that effective. I hope that these are a little better than that. But I mean, billions of dollars to green energy, $1 billion to foreign governments, $10 billion to bail out the Postal Service. And so it seems to me like the Democrats got a lot of what they wanted and the Republicans didn't. So liability protection being one, which you mentioned.
If it could have been carved out that the $600 stimulus checks could have gone out, the $300, a week unemployment federal extended benefits for another 10 weeks as is planned, would you have voted for that?
Sure. I think our plan all along, or what we wanted and what the Senate actually sent over to the House 40 plus times, was very targeted relief, to workers and to particularly industries that were struggling because of the forced shutdowns from government. Those all made sense to me. And yes, I would have supported things like that. But when you make such a blanket, I mean, museums, millions of dollars for museums, $40 million more for the Kennedy Center. I mean, this is just liberal government handouts. I mean, and we can't afford that. And I think coronavirus has shown us the bandwidth that we have to handle crisis because of our current debt picture is thin.
Let me ask you, because President-elect Joe Biden has already indicated that he would like a follow-up coronavirus relief measure, stimulus measure. Would you be open to that?
Again, very targeted on specific businesses. If you bring a business, one of the things great in this bill, and I wish I could have voted for this, the fix to the tax deduction on the PPP program. I mean, that was a good fix to a problem created in the CARES Act. If there's something like that, I'm going to be all for it. But when you lump all this stuff together and you tack in all this extra spending, it's going to destroy our country.
Let me step back and also look at this variant strain in Britain. As a doctor, are you worried about it hitting here?
It's probably already here, Neil. When you think about RNA viruses, they mutate frequently. I anticipate that if it's as prevalent as it is in the UK, there is, that strain is probably present in the United States. It looks like it's in South Africa. They picked it up there already. So it's probably already here. It is, has a higher it allows the virus to transmit faster. However, it doesn't seem to be more virulent, meaning, deadly. So I think there's really nothing to be too concerned about right now, but we've got to dig into it and get to the bottom of it.
While I have you, Congressman, there are reports that the president would be very angry at Vice President Pence if he goes ahead and when the formal joint session of Congress confirms the Electoral College majority that Joe Biden has won, he'll all but look at him as a turncoat. What do you think of that?
Well, I think those two have a pretty good relationship, and I imagine that, Vice President Pence will follow the rules of the House, the rules of the Senate for this joint session, the Constitution. But I think the president and the vice president have a pretty good relationship. So I think the vice president following the rules will be okay.
Does it worry you the way the president goes on with this? And maybe understandably he's concerned about fraud and a process that might have been flawed, but almost every legal case, as an own attorney general, others have said, not to the degree that it would have changed the results of the election. If you had to advise him or talk to him personally, would you tell him to let go, or would you say fight on?
No, I'd say continue with the legal cases. I mean, that's, again, my statement all along has been, we have this process, continue those cases where they're suspected fraud. I mean, look at it this way, Neil. Think of the future of our election. People right now, there are a lot of people who are struggling with confidence. So I'm really hopeful that the president will take all this out, make sure that the decisions are made by the courts, and we can create some confidence for the American people. Because right now, even a pretty significant percentage of Democrats think that there was some funny work in the election.
But not enough to turn the results? In other words, do you recognize Joe Biden as the next president of the United States?
I'm waiting on all these court battles to work their way out.
Really? All right. Congressman, thank you very much. Good catching up with you. Hope you have a very Merry Christmas, a healthy one at that. Congressman Mark Green of Tennessee.